I'm Joyce Woodworth. Welcome to the Spirit of the Heartland. Today we're at the Winona Historical Society, where I'm about to present a DVD copy of all the Spirit of the Heartland shows produced in 2006. In their archives, they have a copy of all the Spirit of the Heartland as well as Spirit of Winona shows ever produced. In their archives, they hold actually most of Winona's history. On today's show, we're going to learn what you can discover for yourself in the archives, and we're going to speak with Mark Peterson, the current director of the Society, to learn what else goes on here and why the Historical Society is so very important to our community. The building itself is very historical. It was built as a National Guard armory, and it also later on had roller skating, and it housed the rock and roll bands in the 60s. Dion and the Belmonts, the Ventures, Conway Twitty, as well as many others actually performed here on the stage. And the building itself, we're going to find out, has many interesting artifacts from other buildings. For instance, the wainscoting here from the Winona Post Office, which was torn down, and here the banister is from the Winona Courthouse. Behind me is the door from the elevator shaft from the Choate building. Well, let's go in and find out for ourselves what else is of interest in this historical building. When you enter the Historical Society, you first enter the museum, which has great memorabilia from way back from the Winona area. And then you may be greeted by one of the volunteers. Today we happen to have Jo Lene, who is a volunteer here, and she's going to be the greeter today. Hi, Jo.
Well, good afternoon. It's nice to see you.
Well, welcome to the Spirit of the Heartland, and how wonderful for you to be a volunteer here at the Historical Society.
I enjoy it very much. It's a fun place to be.
Great. Tell us a little bit about how often do you volunteer here?
I come in a couple afternoons a week, and sometimes I come with the idea of just doing something that they might need to have done, and sometimes I come and just wait for the customers to come in and explain to them what we offer here and what we have, and what a nice place it is to visit.
Well, tell me a little bit about some of the people that come in. Do you have primarily people from Winona? Are they local? Or?
Well, we have a nice cross-section. For instance, yesterday I had a gentleman who just purchased a home in Winona, an old home, and he wanted to know where he could find out some history about it. So I sent him down to the archives. And other times we'll have people come in and say, well, I don't live here, but my grandparents used to, and is there some way we can find out about, our family and where they lived and how they lived and everything. Mm-hmm. And then other times we have people who just want to see some bits of history, so they'll come in and look around.
Bits of history can be found on all 3 levels of the Historical Society building. In the center of the main floor are horse-drawn carriages from the Victorian period, along with a cave for children to explore, an Indian teepee, and a replica of a steamboat, as well as various display cases. There's a hook and ladder wagon from one of Winona's original volunteer fire departments. It carries a large number of buckets for use by the bucket brigade. Behind it is the hose wagon, which had 2 wooden handrails running parallel alongside. These were pumped up and down by volunteers and connected to the hose, which sucked water from a tank to put out the fire. Home-delivered furniture arrived from this horse-drawn carriage, and a wealthy Winona family traveled from place to place in this beautiful, privately owned carriage. School children more than likely sat under a buffalo robe in this more modest-looking carriage called a buckboard, while their father drove them to a one-room schoolhouse on cold winter days. Around the perimeter of the room is a mock-up of various businesses found on Winona's main streets back in the day. You can take a peek into a general store found in every town in the USA. Down the street is a fully equipped dentist's office. You can also view the front and back of a teller's windows taken from a local bank. A few steps further takes you to a typical barbershop from the 1930s and 40s. World War II posters hang from the walls, and memorabilia from that era is displayed in well-lit cases, giving you the story of how Winona and the surrounding area dealt with the hardships of that war. An interesting history of Winona's colleges can also be found here. We're down in the basement now of the Historical Society, and I'm just about to enter the archives where all the written history of Winona area is stored. And this is where I spend so much of my time if I'm doing a historical documentary of this area. I love this place, and I love walking down here because there's wonderful pictures of Winona that you can just stand here for hours and gaze at. Okay, let's go in and see what else is in here.
Well, hi Joyce, welcome to the archives.
Well,
what do you have here?
Well, I have some more copies of the Spirit of the Heartland show for you.
Well, that's great. We really enjoyed what you've given us in the past. We put them back on the archives, catalog them in, and become available for people to use. And we even have people coming to use them.
Oh, well, that's good to know.
It is,
okay.
Yes, I think so. Well, thank you very much.
Here you are.
I'll just set these right over here.
Okay.
So they're out of the way. And
well, what is going on here? What are you working on?
This is the old Winona newspaper, the old Republican Herald morgue. That we acquired when the Republican Herald moved over to where the Daily News is now located on Franklin Street. This is from downtown. They chose not to take this with them, and so we inherited it.
Oh, so people can come here and actually look up old newspapers?
Well, actually, no.
Okay.
These are so fragile, as you can see, many of them are falling apart. That these are all been microfilm, and we prefer to use the microfilm.
The Winona Republican Herald was the name of Winona's newspaper from 1901 until 1954. Almost every copy of this paper can be viewed on the Historical Society's microfilm machine, which Walt demonstrates to us.
There's two ways to work with this. There's either hand reels, or we can use the buttons and push and adjust to various places on here. We can make a copy then of any particular article. For example, this one here on this haberdashery with the date. We can simply set it up, push the start button. A copy will come out down here on the printer that's found below the microfilm. And this is then a copy of that. Anybody can use the equipment. We're willing to show them how to do it and get them started on it, and then they can do their searching. We also use these ourselves to find information for our own purposes, or because of costs and that, we do charge 30 cents a sheet.
Well, Walt has pulled out one of the books from the Winona Republican Herald collection, and this book is actually in a little bit better shape than most of them. And wow, the colors are really nice on here. I'm very amazed at this.
It's very interesting what they have set up on how the newsprint has held together in many cases. Unfortunately, in a lot of cases, the newsprint is crumbling.
What else do you store in the archives?
Well, right behind you, we have the city directories that go back to the earliest is 1867. We also have a catalog of obituaries. Plus we have, which we acquired from the public library, a catalog of the World War II newspaper articles that somebody in the public library in World War II had indexed. What
do you suppose is the oldest document you have down here in the archives?
We have a pardon that was signed by Abraham Lincoln for Dr. Houghton. We found some letters signed by Teddy Roosevelt.
So what kind of things are people looking for when they come down here?
A family history, houses, general history of the community. We have a goodly number of Winona State students coming in looking for materials for reports that have been signed for them by the English classes, the history classes, and the like. So we're getting a wide number of people coming in now, and it seems to be becoming more and more popular.
Great, you have some great things going on here. Let's take a closer look back in the archives and see exactly what's hidden back there.
Okay.
Okay.
Over here we have our historical files. Again, the same type of thing is used. These are placed in alphabetical order of history events, things, places, other types of events. For example, here's some articles here in this file on the Catholic Diocese of Winona. Again, newspaper clippings that go back in some cases to the early 1900s. Here's an example of one about Bishop Waters when he was retiring from the church in the Diocese of Winona. So again, this was done in December 7th, 1986. This here is our marriage license and certificate file we acquired from the Winona County, and these have, starting with 1854, the marriage licenses that were generated out of Winona County, which we have available. It looks like this, and that is the license to Theodore Bolter and Ida Schaefer. They were married in Winona County in 1898. We have this record available. We sell copies of this for $3 a copy. This is our photograph collection here. We've probably got 100,000 different photographs which we've acquired over the years. Some of these have come from individuals, others have come from staff photographs, and others have come from the Winona Daily News. Over the years they've given us their old photographs. This particular box here, box 23B, has, among other things, pictures of the old post office. The back of the old post office with the trucks that are available to move the mail. On this side here we have a steamboat collection of photographs. But this is Orrin Smith's nominee when he landed in the island of Winona. It was the first boat that carried settlers that stayed here on the island.
The archives hold a wealth of knowledge for the local historian. Every place we turned, Walt brought out another valuable piece of history. For instance, a photograph album containing every local boy returning from World War II. Also found were boxes of treasures from prominent area citizens, such as the Watkins family personal letter collection, and pilot Max Conrad's papers, including information from his world-famous flights. There are boxes containing personal letters from smaller collections, such as Matthew Marvin's Letters Home from the Civil War, dated in 1864. Stacks and stacks of historical books sit on the shelves.
This book has been rebound. It's Winona Illustrated, 1888. This is a very useful book in that it has a lot of photographs. For example, the old Slade building, which is on the corner of Main and 3rd Street.
One could spend days in the archives gathering information on any aspect of the Winona area history. Beyond the archives is an area the general public doesn't see. This storage area shows the overcrowded conditions of the current Historical Society's building. Mark Peterson, the director of the Society, meets us here and shows us part of their fabulous clothing collection.
It's a remarkable collection of clothing dating from the 1840s all the way up to the present. And it's just, it's available here for, research and exhibits. It's just that we're not using it as well as we could. Women's hats are up above, men's clothing along this wall, and then a lot of the more fragile things are stored in these acid-free boxes. Some of these, wedding dresses and things like that. The men's clothing tends to run more along the line of old uniforms, whether it's baseball or military uniforms, firemen's, police uniforms, things like that. They tended to just wear their clothes and wear them out. Women took better care of them, I guess. But everything from eyeglasses, shoes, you name it. The Historical Society's probably collected it at one time.
Because of space and time, many of the collections are hidden from the public. However, building expansion is definitely in the plans for the Society. From the archives, we take the elevator to the second floor, where an absolutely wonderful display exists. A timeline wraps around the room from Winona's history.
We have some wonderful exhibits on Native American history here. It's some great artifacts, and then early exploration, early settlement, and then kind of goes through the Civil War and the Victorian era, right up to, you know, green stamps and Barbie dolls. So.
Oh, it's fascinating.
One of the first things that people see when they walk in our front entrance is they see a stained glass window, which we had made back in 1985 on our 50th anniversary, which is really a Winona County history window. It's an important industry in Winona, and this window, I think, reflects not only that, but it helps interpret a little bit about the history of our county. This building was originally constructed in 1915 as a National Guard armory for the Minnesota National Guard. In fact, right in front of us on the floor is still the National Guard symbol. Worked well for them. It was more than just a guard building. It was really a community center, much as it is today with the Historical Society. Boxing matches, wrestling matches, basketball, dances on Saturday nights, car shows, all kinds of things have taken place in this building.
The Historical Society purchased the historic building in the 1960s. Prior to that, it was housed in the Winona Courthouse, Phelps School, and the UBC building. Mark tells us about the original organization of the Society back in the 1930s.
Well, the credit for the County Historical Society in Winona County really falls to a woman by the name of Mildred Sebo. Mildred was very active in the 4-H groups at that time. Winona County 4-H put a historical pageant on out in Whitewater State Park in 1934, and it was so hugely successful that it was sort of obvious that, you know, people really were caring a lot about their past, and I think a lot of it had to do with in 1934, 1935, we were in the midst of the worst depression this country's ever had, and I think people were looking for a way to, you know, looking for a time when things were better. From that, Mildred convinced a group of people, including Bill Codman, an attorney in town here, and some others, to form a historical society, and in June 1935, in the basement of the Winona County Courthouse, our organization's life began. World War II intervened, and the Society, like a lot of other organizations, were inactive. But after the war, Francis Lucas, being one of the principal people, wanted to get the Historical Society back and active again, and they approached a young doctor in town by the name of Dr. Lewis Younger, and he jumped in with both feet, and for the next 20 years, Dr. Younger and the Historical Society were almost synonymous, and it was under his tenure that the Historical Society acquired the original Wilkie or the Pearson and converted it to the Wilkie and a steamboat museum, acquired the Bunnell House in Homer, which we still own. The Wilkie, of course, burned, and that's not one of our properties. The Arches Museum, which is still one of our properties, 9 miles west of Winona, across from Farmers Park. We're not the oldest, but we're certainly one of the most active and certainly one of the top historical societies in the state. We are the largest in terms of our membership, with about 1,400 members, which is pretty remarkable for a county historical society.
Well, you do an awesome job here in the museum. It's very interesting. But you go way beyond just your museum. You reach out to the community and you offer them so many different things. Let's talk about your events and what you offer to the community.
Sure. Some of our special events include our Heritage Fair, which until 2 years ago was the Victorian Fair. But that's a very important event for the Society. Not so much financially, but from a programming and education aspect. It really does draw a lot of people to the community and gives the society a lot of visibility. We also put on a Christmas house tour, and it's a way to promote Winona's architecture and wonderful homes. Another very popular event called Voices from the Past, Woodlawn Cemetery Discovery Walk. That's a sort of a living history program at a wonderful and very beautiful cemetery right here in Winona. We also put on a family frolic at the Arches Museum, and a new one, relatively new. It's called Chocolate Shakespeare and Champagne, and we do that in June in conjunction with the Great River Shakespeare Festival, and we do that at the Alexander House Bed and Breakfast. And those are the events, but we provide on a twice monthly basis our we call them food for thought programs, sort of noon hour educational programs. We do a lot of nighttime programming.
Oh, you have a great group of volunteers, and this has got to be the most active historical society in the nation.
Well, I'll put us up against just about anybody, certainly in the state. And I know, yes. I think all 87 county historical societies, and you know, there are some that are just very well funded. We're not one of them. Back in May of 2006, the Historical Society was given a $1.5 million challenge grant from the Laird Norton Company. That's the largest challenge grant ever given to a county historical society in Minnesota's history. So I mean, just putting this in perspective, it's huge. And it's tied in very closely with an expansion project. We know we're out of space here. We need to plan for the future. We're not an organization that is going out of business ever. We're never going to stop collecting unless we can't, and we're getting close to that point. But for a couple of years, the Historical Society's been looking at its own needs, and one of its needs is more space. And Laird Norton Company stepped up with this very generous offer, and it's tied into our ability to build onto this building. The Historical Society worked very hard to acquire, much harder than we needed to, in my opinion, to acquire that property next to us. But we did on August 7th, when the county board voted to sell the property to the Winona Port Authority, and the Port Authority voted to sell it to the Historical Society. And on August 31st, we paid $85,600 for that parking lot, and it's ours. If we raise $1.5 million by June 30th next year, and we're well on our way.
By the start of 2008, the Historical Society raised over $1 million in gifts and pledges to match the Laird Norton's $1.5 million donation. From 13 architectural proposals, the firm of Hamel, Green, and Abrahamson from Minneapolis was chosen to design the new addition. Architects Joan Serrano and John Cook from the firm's Innovative Design Studio and designers of the famous Museum of the North in Fairbanks, Alaska, are working with Mark and the Historical Society's board to come up with the perfect addition. In December of 2007, they shared with members of the Society, through a mock-up model of Winona's downtown, some of their initial ideas.
This would be kind of an open space that would mediate between the new and the old. And by doing that, and this would be very glassy.
We primarily work on museums, and we're always looking for clients that have very high expectations about architecture and design. So we thought, you know, this could be kind of interesting. So, you know, the first thing I did, or what we did, was get in the car and come down here. And, you know, I have to say, it blew me away. Not only for the natural beauty of the river and the bluffs, but then this amazing architectural legacy. And as an architect, this is really rare, to have the combination of the landscape, the topography, and then all this really beautiful architecture. And I so enjoyed walking around town, looking at the various buildings and going inside. And I got so excited about the idea of somehow trying to continue this legacy into the 21st century. History museums are booming. They're booming because people they're telling stories that people can find themselves in, and they're touching people on kind of an emotional, intellectual, and spiritual way. And I think, you know, these are the kinds of things that we're going to think about when we start to design the building that I think will very much impact what the building looks like. This building was built for the National Guard. This is an armory. This was never intended to be a museum building. And so it's very solid, it's very heavy. When you're on the street and you pass by it, it's not saying come on in. Again, because it was built as an armory. So I think what we're going to do is we're going to play off of that. And the addition we're thinking about in terms of being a little bit more light, a little bit more open, and a little bit more welcoming.
When we do finish this project, it's going to be a very exciting addition for the Historical Society and for all the people of Winona County, because we're going to have a much better museum facility. We're going to be better able to care for these collections which are entrusted to us, and it's going to solve our needs for a very long time to come.
Great. We are lucky to have our history in your hands, Mark. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Joyce.
Okay, and thank you for joining me today here at the Historical Society, the very active Historical Society in Winona. Thanks for joining me. Please join me again next week. Till then, enjoy the Spirit of the Heartland.